I think that reparations can take the form of money payments. I do believe that. I think it can take the form of repatriation. You know, my brothers and sisters in the Caribbean said, look, give me $100,000 and I'm out of here. You know, I'm going back to Africa.
Identity, unique identity, is a very serious thing. I want to protect Ghana for Ghanaians. So I'm going to have 3 different kinds of identity in Ghana, 3 different passports. The first passport belongs to a full Ghanaian. Mother, father, parents Ghanaian. You are entitled to have the first kind of passport. And that passport is the only passport and the only kind of identity that can contest for presidency in this country. Secondly, can contest for parliamentary election and can acquire any kind of properties in this country. So if you don't hold the first identity, you cannot buy properties in this country. You can only buy properties through, and if you are holding a second identity, which is half Ghanaian and half foreign, you can only buy property through the first citizen and use his name to acquire property. If you are holding the third one, which is naturalized to be a Ghanaian, you cannot even buy any property at all. If you are holding the third one, which is naturalized to be a Ghanaian, you cannot even buy any property at all. We are fast losing every property of ours to the foreigners. And we are going to become 21st century slaves, including our children, in the next years to come. Because the Nigerians, the foreigners, the Lebanese, they bought all the prime lands and everything in this country. And you get to a point that a Ghanaian cannot own property because we don't have money. We don't have the resources. Our politicians are selling everything to the foreigners for peanuts. Go to Trasacco there, and then you enter and see the number of Ghanaians there, very few. And this is our country. Where do we live? Slums. That's where we live. What is our property? Do we want to become 21st century slaves because we are poor? Because we cannot afford? Yes, you come to my land. This is my land. Lease my land. If you are leasing it, you lease with my name. The day you want to go, you go back the way you came.
You know, I'm going back to Africa. It can take the form, and I'm just thinking of some of the debates we've had among ourselves, you know, about a reparations bank that would be run by a committee and so forth, which is more capitalistic. My colleague Charles Barron, an assemblyman up in New York, and, you know, we've done a lot of work together. He said, look, don't give anybody any money because all you're going to do is pour it back into the very system that created the problem in the first place.
In that agrarian economy, you're just labor. Land is capital. And so to gain money and wealth and to have freedom, you have to have land.
Haven't made a dollar bed, luck is all I've had.
At the end of the war, President Abraham Lincoln had promised the freedmen 40 acres of land per family. But those promises died with Lincoln's assassination.
Instead of 40 acres and a mule, they got the Freedmen's Bank.
The creation of the Freedmen's Savings and Trust Company, or the Freedmen's Bank as it became known, was a bold, even radical idea for its time. With the end of the Civil War in sight, a group of white Northern abolitionists, philanthropists, and business leaders met in New York in January 1865 to explore the formation of a permanent bank to help African American Civil War soldiers and the African American community. Having wages for the first time in their lives, newly emancipated men and women needed a safe place to deposit their earnings. On February 13, 1865, a bill to incorporate the Freedmen's Savings and Trust Company was brought before Congress. Just 3 weeks later, President Abraham Lincoln signed the bill into law. The bank was crucial to help create opportunity for African Americans to build assets. It created a sense of protection for their money and welcomed them into the financial mainstream. Freedmen's Bank was a symbol of a stronger economic future for emancipated men and women at a key turning point in American history. 37 branch offices in 17 states and the District of Columbia were opened. In 1870, the bank's headquarters moved from New York to Washington, D.C., to the southeast corner of Lafayette Square, across the street from the White House and the Treasury Building. It is estimated that over the 9-year life of the bank, approximately 100,000 individuals and institutions opened accounts with bank deposits totaling more than $57 million. That is equivalent to $115 billion today, based on its relative share of gross domestic product. During its first 5 years, Freedmen's Bank operated as a well-functioning institution. However, an amendment to the bank's charter led to risky asset investments.
Henry Cook starts looting the bank. He just starts taking this money and lending it or giving it to some friends and acquaintances, just putting the capital into railroad bonds, which was the subprime market of the day.
With the Freedmen's Bank on the verge of collapse, the federal government turned to the best-known African-American leader in the country to salvage it.
Congress brought in Frederick Douglass to serve as the new president of the Freedmen's Bank. Initially, he invested $10,000 of his own money as a way to shore up the bank, as well as to encourage other African Americans to continue to deposit their money into the bank. But the bank was beyond saving. So Douglass had to go to Congress and say that the bank was bankrupt and it needed to close.
The fact is, I was married to a corpse. I found that I had been placed there with the hope that by some drugs or some mighty magic, I would bring it back. But the life, which was the money, was gone.
The hard-earned savings of the freedmen were lost just in the markets, just poof. And nobody gets prosecuted.
So there's a lot of thoughts. I think land is another one. And, you know, some of my colleagues have talked about that. So the debate is still there, but what we all agree on is that they owe us in some form.
All right, so demanding reparations in the form of money is a conservative position somehow, even though he went on C-SPAN and demanded money. But I guess we will ignore that for a second and focus on these alternatives that he has to actual cash reparations. So we have repatriation back to Africa. When some of these African countries are having issues with foreigners coming in and taking advantage of the fact that they have limited resources. So they kind of want to limit the power that immigrants have in their own countries. And don't let these Pan-African fairy tales confuse you. You will not be welcomed home by their governments as if you're an African or a citizen of their countries. When I say immigrants in their countries, you would be the immigrant. Then we have this idea of opening up a bank, which sounds insane to me based on the history of what has happened with reparations in America and how we were already given a bank as an alternative to reparations. And one would think that a reparations advocate wouldn't even fix their mouth to say some crazy shit like that, knowing the history. But let's move on. Finally, there's land. Now, this was the original idea with the 40 acres and the mule, so I'm not going to sit here and downplay this position. The only thing I would say is that all of these things can be done if we're paid cash reparations. You can take your cash reparations and buy a plane ticket to Africa. You could take your cash reparations, get you a bunch of motherfuckers together, and open up a bank. You could take your cash reparations, go down south somewhere, even up north. You'll be able to find some land that you can buy with your cash. So what exactly makes these better alternatives? If anything, this whole thing sounds like a diversion to avoid doing reparations.
I think that there's again a lot of ways of doing reparation. One that I should have mentioned, there's a school of thought among the reparations activists that look, black folk just don't pay taxes for the next 25 years. And when I'm saying no taxes, I'm talking about no income tax, no sales tax, no property tax, no type of tax, no payroll tax. And that's a form of reparations. And I know a lot of people who are very strong on that issue.
Wait, cash is conservative, but the radical idea is tax cuts? What exactly is tax cuts supposed to do for a group that earns so little in income?